right, welcome back to an exciting episode of the podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Lieutenant Bella Lexi. She is a former police officer, author, whose story went viral. So, looking forward to having her on the show here in just a few minutes. And before we do, let's have a word from today's sponsor. Are you looking for clean energy without jitters and bad side effects? No sugar, artificial sweeteners, or preservatives? With a good source of energy from green tea and B12? Then look no further. Make sure you visit pureboost.com and check them out today. We use this every day. It's our drink of choice to give us that good pick-me-up in the morning.
Okay, welcome back to another fantastic episode of the show. Today we have an exciting special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Bella Lexi.
How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing good. Enjoying the cold weather we're having.
Oh, it's supposed to be about sub-zero temperatures here later this week, so.
Oof, that's
yeah,
rough.
I'm not looking forward to it at all.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, currently I am a soon-to-be author for my first book, and I am also writing a monthly column for a magazine that is for sex workers to write in and ask questions law enforcement related, because I was a law enforcement professional for 28 years. I also run an OnlyFans page and several other paid media pages, and I am an adult film star.
Very cool. So can you tell me about your law enforcement career, how that started, and kind of transition into what ended up going on, and tell us your side of things? I'm definitely very interested to hear your side of the story for sure.
Yeah, so it all kind of started back in the early 90s. Saw an episode of Cops, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And so joined an Explorer program where they kind of teach you about it, which then allowed me to get my first law enforcement job as soon as I turned 18. And I worked in records, then I became a dispatcher, and then ultimately one of the agencies I worked for sent me through the police academy, and I became a police officer. So I was a commissioned officer for 13 years, and someone took it upon themselves to notify my department when they found I had an OnlyFans page, which then launched an investigation. And ultimately, I ended up taking an early retirement and the $30,000 severance package. And in the middle of all of those negotiations, someone leaked my story to the media. So I navigated all of that, tried to tell them this isn't a story, we want to move on. And they came back to me and they're like, well, my news director says it's a story, so you can either do a statement, an on-camera interview, or nothing, but we're running with it. So I sat down with my husband and my attorney, and we decided that we would go ahead and put my side of the story out there. So that aired January 25th of 2021 this year. So I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I tell you, man, people are crazy,
Mm-hmm. Sadly, I found out that it was one of my best friends. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty disturbing, but that's her problem. It's not mine. It's not mine to ask why. So I've just really taken it upon myself to just try to not just make lemonade, but I'm building lemonade stands, and I am doing a lot of different things to not only help myself and my family, but help other sex workers and things like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think your story is interesting because, you were a career woman, doing what sounds like something that you enjoyed doing, and then to have somebody, especially somebody you were really close to,
Mm-hmm.
do what they did. I mean, that just shows what people can do, even if they're close to you. Not everybody has ill will intent, but there are a lot of people out there that do.
Yeah, and I think that that's what stung the most. Not so much, that my career ended, but that it ended as a result of someone that I had been close to. And that was the hard part for me, but like I said, I moved on, and I did uh what I had to do, and it was just something that was supposed to be kinky fun for my husband and I. It wasn't ever supposed to be anything more than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what was that media storm like? Because I would imagine to go from being relatively unknown to being known worldwide had to be a shocker, and had to impact you on some level, not only with everything going on, but a lot of it I would imagine be mentally as well.
Oh, absolutely. So, um, when the investigation had launched or whatever, I ended up taking Family Medical Leave Act to kind of sort through everything that was going on. I mean, it's very stressful to be a cop and have an internal affairs investigation and then one into your personal life like that. Um, so I took 3 months off and found that during that time of just sitting at home wondering what's going to happen, where are we going to go, what's next, uh, all the demons started coming up for my career. I saw a lot of things and experienced a lot of things that no one should ever have to. And I took that on, and that was all part of my job. And I knew that going into it. So I'm not discounting that, but you learn how to put everything away, right? And so I put it away and I buried it. And then when you're sitting at home wondering what's happening with your career and things, the trauma started to come up. So I was seeing a therapist at the beginning almost daily over Zoom because I was still during COVID times. So I would sit in this very chair in this very office on a therapy call and sob my eyes out. But I put in the work to get well, and not just dwell on all of that. So I'm really thankful to her. She really got me through, some dark times. And it's weird to go from anonymous to you'll be at the grocery store. In fact, I didn't even go anywhere the first 2 weeks that the story came out. I didn't leave the house. So then to go to the store and people are like, looking at you like a girl from the news. It was just different because I always tried to just be under the radar, right? Answer to family and friends. Why would you do that? And it was something that we chose to do. We're adults, right? And so, and we lost friends over it, but were they really my friends? You know, Ultimately
Yeah.
you have to figure out, are you really my friend or not my friend? And if you're going to abandon me in a time like this, you might not agree with it, but I still need friends. I'm still the same person. It's just people have seen me naked on the internet.
Yeah, and it's weird how that works, where people you think are your friends and people you think you're close to, when something happens, whether it's what happened to you or something bad in general, you get to see who your friends, who they actually are, and you'll see the true side of people.
hmm And this was definitely one of those situations where I didn't reach out to anyone because I didn't know. Because now all of a sudden I'm on my heels and I'm like, well, I don't know who I can turn to and who I can't. And there were a lot of people who did reach out and were very respectful and offered their support and all of those kinds of things. So in that aspect, I was very fortunate. I didn't get a lot of personal negative feedback. I would maybe notice someone had deleted me off of socials or or whatever, but I never got any ugly personal messages that were like, how dare you, or, that kind of thing. So for the most part, I had great support, and I chose not to read comments on any of the stories because, it's like probably doing your podcast. Like if someone sends you a negative comment, you're going to kind of be like, oh, that's a gut punch, right?
Right.
So I was like, I'm just not going to read that. Like, and I'm just going to live my life, and I'll share my story, and hopefully I can make a difference for someone else if it happens to them or whatever. But, and ironically, it's funny because when I see a news story of this happening to someone or whatever, I look up the story, I vet them the best I can, and then I reach out to them if it looks like their story is legitimate. Because there are a lot of people who, I hate to say it, but took my story and kind of turned it into their own or whatever, or fabricated things to get the sympathy and empathy to boost their situation. But I lost a 28-year career, so that's a pretty big deal versus just getting out of the police academy and having your page discovered or whatever,
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times nowadays, and I would imagine it's been this way for a while, but there are a lot of people looking for that instant 15 minutes of fame just to get their name out there.
Well, and it does come at a cost, and it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, and then you have people like yourself who, like I said earlier, you were a career woman, and then all of a sudden something that wasn't supposed to be a huge deal turned into a big deal, and you ended up losing your career over it, which it's not by any stretch of the imagination fair on any level, because I feel like, and this is just me personally, just being on the opposite side and the opposite sex, if that would have happened to a man, it probably wouldn't have happened that way. It wouldn't have gone down that way.
No, it would have been high fives. It would have been game taps. It would have been fist bumps, and that's just goes to show the difference in society. I had someone who actually messaged me today on my Instagram, and they're like, well, why would anyone not want you to do it? You think that everyone who worked for you would just want to look at you? Which that did happen after the story came out. I mean, I heard all about it, even though I wasn't at work, how, the guys were in the locker room and all around one dude's phone who subscribed and looking at everything, which, okay, I can't stop it, and I'm not embarrassed by it. So if you want to look at me and see me naked, okay, it still doesn't change the fact that I would have them toe the line and do the right thing, because it had been going on for 18 months before it was ever discovered. So,
it's wild. I mean, it really is. It's kind of a double standard, so to speak, I guess would be the right terminology.
It is 100%, because I can tell you, we would sit, when I was not a supervisor, just a line officer, we would sit in our substations and talk about porn and, oh, did you see this video? And, oh, whatever. I was one of the guys. I never was treated differently per se until it was me. And then it was this whole shift in what they believed about adult things, sadly.
Yeah. When after we talked on the phone, I guess it was last week or week before last, I was talking to my wife about, your story, and I don't remember exactly how we came across it, but we went and searched you on YouTube to see, so I could see what interviews you had done, and and so I knew what, not really what to look for, but what to kind of steer myself away from. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember which video it was, but there was a news interview, and it might have been the one that you were talking about. And, even she was saying the same things I was. It was just kind of like, why would you do this to a person? I mean, it makes no sense. You know, what you do behind closed doors is what you do. It shouldn't involve anybody else's opinion.
Hmm. Well, and that's just it. And I think that whoever leaked it to the media didn't really, yeah, they did it to me, but I don't think they thought about my husband. I don't think they thought about my kids or my other family. You know, it was to get at me, but ultimately it touched more than just me. You know, I have teenagers, and it's not a comfortable conversation to sit down and be like, "Hey, so this is what's going on," you know. Especially in today's time where kids are sending images back and forth that they shouldn't be sharing. You know, and I took it as a teaching moment. I'm like, look, okay, so yes, I've told you don't take nudes and don't share nudes. Well, here's a perfect example of what can happen with your nudes. And now everyone in the world is talking about me right now. So maybe I should have taken my own advice as a parent, you know. But like I said, I never thought that it would ever be connected because I never identified as a police officer. I never said where I worked, none of that. I had a different name, you know. I never went by anything that would identify me as that.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I would imagine that, you know, of course, you know, having kids that are teenagers, when all this went down, I wouldn't imagine it, it would change the way they view you, but I would imagine that it probably changed them a little bit in the fact that, you know, maybe their friends, you know, are searching and things like that, and you know, you never know what a person is willing to say to you as far as when something bad happens, not necessarily to the person, but somebody that you know, especially your own mother.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think what we've been doing is I can only imagine it would be hard because I did not grow up in a famous family, right? So I can't relate. I don't know. But think about movie stars' kids. You know, they grow up and their parents are famous. That's probably difficult as just general life. But now you add on that I'm famous with a sexual twist to it, and that makes it that much more difficult. So, you know, we've talked about if a friend comes to you and shows you something, just say, hey, you know what? Um, that's my mom, my bonus mom, and they're my stepkids with my bonus mom. And I love her, and we don't talk about it, and I don't want to see it. And that it's okay to set boundaries with friends. And you don't have to look at it if someone's showing it to you. And the
Yeah,
real
and you
friend will
almost
be like,
have to.
sorry.
Yeah, you have to set boundaries, even if it's with family. You know, you gotta be able to draw the line and go, enough's enough.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's not a story with the kids, right? Like they've moved on. At first, yeah, oh God, it was everywhere, right? But now it's just not something that we dwell on. It's not something that we sit and talk about every day. It's not something that, I mean, none of it was ever shot or done while they were here. So it's never really been a direct, thing that they had to deal with other than the news story.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I think your story is very very interesting because you see what can happen if you make one mistake and somebody gets wind of it.
Hmm.
And I really wouldn't even call
Yeah,
it a mistake. You know, it was just something that nobody else was supposed to see.
right. It was behind a paywall. Part of the agreement on OnlyFans is that you won't share the media. You won't, pictures or videos or whatever. Um, you have to be 18. You have to have an ID. You have to have all of those things. So it was never anything that should have ever been looked at by anyone under the age of 18 anyway, you know. But obviously when it's on your local news station, kids are going to go look. And if their parents don't have parameters set up on their phones, they're going to find it. Which then that becomes another talking point of securing your kids' data access and what they can see and can't see.
Yeah, and the thing that kind of blows my mind is that with all the standards and practices that OnlyFans has, how did somebody do that and not get in trouble? You know what I mean?
Well, because I had no idea who. I mean, you can put yourself on there as, I could go on there as Jane Doe, and I can't. No one can access the information on my profile, so all they see is whatever name I give myself. So I would
Gotcha.
have no way to know who did it to report them for violating terms of service.
Gotcha. You'd think they'd have something set in place for that.
Yeah, not that I knew at the time, and I was so overwhelmed because when the story went international, like my page got a lot of traffic, and I couldn't get below 900 unread messages for probably 2 weeks. I would get on every day. I personally responded to every message, and it's like I could get down to maybe 900, and then the next morning when I woke up, I had to whittle my way back to 900. Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, I can only imagine, what you went through other than, forget the fact that, that you lost your 28-year career, but what was it like to go from unknown to just virtually almost everybody knowing who you are?
It's a very weird feeling. It's almost surreal. Like, to wake up and know that 1,400 people sent me a message and wanted to talk to me. I'm just another girl, right? I'm just, but in those initial moments, people could relate to me in some way. They could, they felt for me. They wanted to get started. They wanted to just get started in the industry. They wanted to some people would just make an account to say, hey, I just wanted to pay your subscription fee just to support you a little bit and tell you I don't agree with what happened to you. And sometimes by the time I would be able to message them, their account was already deleted, and they just did it to support me in some way. But yeah, it is different. It was really interesting when I went to Exotica in July. So I hired an agent, I think it was in June, to get into the adult film industry because it just kind of seemed like the next logical step. My husband and I talked about it a lot, and we were like, okay, well, we're both okay with this. And so I went to Exotica in July and assigned at a booth. And I was so touched at the number of people who were like, I read about your story. I'm really glad I got to meet you. So even in person, people at Exotica knew who I was and knew my story and just wanted to, give me some support, which was really cool to me, And I've had a lot of opportunity to make a lot of differences in people's lives. Just since all this has happened, like I'm working on a nonprofit for underserviced sex workers because there's a definite need for that. I'm hoping to have that rolled out next summer. But with the book and just everything else that's going on, I just don't have the time to seriously dedicate to that. But I've had a lot of sex workers reach out to me and be like, I know you're not a police officer anymore, but this happened to me. Is this a crime? Should I report it? I'm afraid to report it because people will just judge me because I am a sex worker and might not take me seriously, things like that. And I've been able to give folks some advice on how to handle that. And then that's kind of what prompted the monthly column in ASN magazine. Was I was talking to the owner an editor, and he's like, this could be something really good if you'd be interested in doing it. I've gotten a lot of great questions, and it's just another little way for me to give back.
Yeah, so tell me about the book. I saw on your Instagram where you had a little snippet where you were talking about the book coming out. What's it about, and how did you go about writing the book?
So interestingly enough, the publishing company, Berman Books, actually reached out to me. They had seen my story and knew my experience and whatever. And he was super awesome. He reached out. He was like, hey, I just want to see if you'd potentially be interested in writing a book. And I was like, well, what kind of book? And, so we did a lot of talking, and it's going to be relationship and sex advice. It's going to be a quick, short read, like 120 pages. So I have it's due to go to editing in February. And then it will be in bookstores all across North America in May. So, and I think we need someone during this time. I don't know if you know Dr. Ruth. She used to have a column, and people could write in and ask her questions about relationship advice and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like we kind of need someone in today's society who has experienced a lot of things and who has seen a lot of things and can give that advice and is non-judgmental and can tackle some of the sensitive conversations that we aren't having, but that can make a relationship stronger or help you navigate dating, things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in today's society, especially, people can be very crude, rude, and insensitive. And we need more people who are trying to give good advice and not advice that's going to benefit the person giving it.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about this philosophy behind the book is it's going to be gender neutral. So it's not, and it's going to be for ages 25 to 45, 55, because dating, I was married early, got divorced, experienced online dating, all of those kinds of things. So I have a lot of experience to offer, and also navigating the dating scene after COVID, where for 2 years we weren't having contact with people. And that can be scary for some people, and learning how to be social again and interact in person.
Yeah, I mean, because that's key for anything, business relationships or personal relationships, is having that one-on-one with somebody, and being around people in general that are good for you. Because without that, especially with kids growing up during the whole COVID thing, you're killing them becoming social and being able to get along with people and being able to have that interaction.
Mm-hmm. I remember when a lot of the COVID restrictions lifted finally, and we hosted, we do a crawfish boil every year. And so we hosted one. It had been a couple of years because of the restrictions and whatever. And I was still in law enforcement, and I lived next door to a Karen who would call my work at everything I did. So I knew if I had a party, she was going to report me to my work for violating COVID restrictions, right? So anyway, our first one we had, it was really funny because we're all standing out here and everybody's like, it's just so weird to like be hanging out and talking again. And it's like, how do you start those conversations? And how is it not all about COVID? And you don't really have, people weren't traveling and they weren't doing all these things. So it's like, what do you talk about?
Yeah.
I mean, we traveled all through COVID. I was one of those, I got my vaccinations, I did all my things, but I wasn't going to let it slow me down. And I can definitely say the one thing I do miss about COVID times is empty airplanes.
Right.
But it is true though, that first event, like no one had been, it's like, oh yeah, we just got back from wherever, right? When before COVID, everyone's traveling everywhere, going to Vegas. going to California, doing all this. Well, people weren't doing that. So it's like, what do you talk about? And so I think that's something that is really important as we move forward as a society, is learning how to reintegrate communication and reintegrate, topics to talk about when maybe you don't have a lot to talk about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's crazy because I work in automotive full time. So, it's a retail world. And, when you have people that aren't coming in, not only does it hurt business, but it, can create, like you said, like a lack of social interaction. And then when you do get people to come into the store, even if it's Kroger, Walmart, everybody's so standoffish, they don't want to have an interaction based off of what they hear in the media. And, that's where, you just kind of got to laugh a little bit because the media likes to blow things out of proportion regardless of what it is.
Right. And so, and I think too, yes, is my book mostly directed towards like relationships, like dating, marriage, whatever? Yes. However, communication is important in everything we do. It's important for you in your industry to build rapport with a customer and learn how to communicate with them effectively, because you're trying to sell something, they're trying to buy something, and you're trying to navigate that now in person, which didn't really go on for quite a while. I mean, you're lucky. You were probably able to work mostly through COVID because people still needed their cars worked on. Safety issue, right? Community issue. So, but it can apply to all kinds of things, not just relationships, but it can apply to sales. It can apply to all of those things. It can apply to parenting, how to be a better listener to effectively parent your teenagers. They might not be saying something in particular, but if you listen, you might be able to actually communicate with them and find out exactly what they're trying to say.
Exactly.
So I think that's ultimately where I want to go with this. I would love to, have a chance to go speak at events, whether it's women's events or whatever, retreats for couples, whatever that looks like, because I do have a lot of experience and I've stood in a lot of people's living rooms and helped them figure stuff out that they couldn't figure out on their own.
Yeah. And see, that's what I think your story does for a lot of people, is it creates that, not really so much environment, but it helps with whatever environment that person or a couple may be dealing with, in the fact that you've been there, you're living it. And, when you get advice from somebody who's been there and done that, you kind of listen a little bit more. But the other side of that is it helps people that have been in your situation or maybe already are in your situation realize that, people do stupid stuff all the time. People do mean things to each other, but there's good out there. And to see that and hear that people are being respectful in when they meet you, and, that your story is helping inspire other people is great, because you just don't hear a whole lot about that. And it should be highlighted a lot more than bad things.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I will also say that I think there's always a lot of question around the sex industry. And most of us get all of our information from TV, documentaries, movies, and that kind of thing. And to actually now be on that side of it, it's actually been a very interesting experience. And it's not as bad as, I guess I would caution people, when you watch these shows, what is the angle of their show or their movie or whatever? It's not abusive. It's not, I've never once been uncomfortable. Everyone has been incredibly professional. And sometimes I even say more professional than some of the cops I worked with over my career. So I think we're all afraid of what we don't know.
Right.
And this isn't something that most people would know. I've met some amazing people who have become very close friends of mine. Um, Chanel St. James. She was a Jenna Jameson contract girl. So she worked back early on in the industry. She got out for a while. She's come back and she's a wealth of knowledge. And she has been through crazy stuff, right? She has some incredible stories, but she's willing to help me just as I'm willing to help her maybe with technology, right? Because a lot of this business is based on technology. So she's not afraid I'm going to take her position away and she's not going to take mine away, but we sure have a lot to offer one another. And so we've become very close. And it's interesting because law enforcement is like, it's big, but it's small. And it's a family, they say. Well, it's the same with the porn industry, except for it's smaller. And so we all know each other. Um, People I've shot with, my husband has met. We go to events and he's like, oh, yeah, my wife worked with you and whatever, right? Like it's so, where you go someplace and you always know someone in the room.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that from your perspective, just because a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people try to demonize what people do in the adult film industry. But at the end of the day, it's work. It's not necessarily something that's geared towards everyone, which is okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you don't necessarily have to like what the person's doing, but like meeting you, even though it's over virtual, but meeting you, you can definitely see that you're a very nice person. Your heart's in the right place, and you don't mean any malice towards anyone.
No, not at all. I laugh when someone goes, well, what you do is infidelity and cheating on your husband. I'm like, well, no, it's not, because it's work. And I'm not going to lie, it is work to film adult films. It's not easy. Um, and then when we're done on the set, we are done. And I don't go to their apartment or their hotel room or whatever. They don't come to mine. We do what we do on set. And when we socialize, it's not sexual, if that makes any kind of sense. So, yeah, do I have sex with other people? Yes. However, I'm not sneaking around. I'm not hiding it. My husband takes me to the airport, and that's the difference. It's just something that I do for work, and I love it. And for something that people are always so judgmental about, it's very fascinating, because how is something that no one is interested in and so judgmental about $1 billion industry every year? And no one is interested and no one's buying.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, it's no different than being an actor or a musician, or regardless of whatever industry you're in. When you're in the limelight, like the adult film industry is, along with being just an actor or musician, you're going to always have that detractor. You're always going to have that one person that just shakes their finger at you, no matter what.
So don't look at it. Don't look at it.
That's
and don't
it.
buy it.
Right? I mean, you're not wrong in that aspect. It's one of those things where in today's society, I think that people are just so quick to demonize somebody without actually getting to know the person first.
Right. And that was one of the things I said, I think, in my initial interview when the story came out. I was like, look, I'm still the same person. I just do a different job. I'm not a police officer anymore. And I'll tell you what, every snowstorm, I am out here and I am shoveling all the old people on my block. I shovel their driveways and their walks, right? Like, because I'm still that same person. Oh, you need me to mow your lawn? Okay, great. Just because I'm a porn star doesn't mean I can't get dirty. You need help with something, call me. And in fact, I'm more available to people around my neighborhood. I'm more available to my kids. Whereas, when I was a cop, I missed soccer games, softball games, baseball games, um, picnics, barbecues, because I was always working. And now I get to do it all. I get to go to travel tournaments and hang out with all the parents, you know? And I love it. I'm available if my kids get sick at school. Okay, I'll come get you. No problem. Right? Whereas before I've been like, okay, well, all right, the next shift comes in at 1:30. I can try to be there by 1:45. Can you tough it out? Right? Well, now I don't have to do that. I can put a pause on most anything.
Yeah, and I don't think, and this is just myself personally, I don't think that, doing what you do is any different than doing what I do, except for, you know, I of course, the scheduling, like I have a set schedule, and, being the manager of the place, if something goes wrong, like what you were saying, then I got to be there.
Yeah.
Where, it's really not any different. You're getting paid to do something, regardless of what it is, and it's one of those things that, not everybody likes a salesman. Not everybody's going to like what you do. No, not everybody's going to like actors or musicians, or it's just the nature of today's society, and it sucks that it's that way. But what are you going to do? I guess.
Well, and we live on this.
Yes,
we're here all the time, right? So everything to you, real life speed, and that takes away a lot of privacy. It takes away a lot of those things, which I think had this happened 10 years ago, wouldn't have probably been as big of a story. You know what I mean? But because we have technology that tells us everything that's going on right now, up to the minute, it's a thing. And, that's one of the other things I talk about in my book is how do we move from our phones to being checked in?
Yeah, and technology has ruined our society. Well, I say that, but some things it's good, some things it's bad.
Right. Yeah. So, but like I said, I think this could have gone one of two ways. I could have cried about it forever and found myself doing a 9-to-5 that I hated, or take all of this and make a change for other people and do something positive, because that's what I did as a cop. So why can't I do it now? The population I serve is just a little different. The needs are a little different, but I'm still serving a community.
Right. Yeah. And, where do you see yourself and in a couple of years, not really a couple of years, but 5 to 10 years down the road? And what advice would you give somebody who may end up being in the same position that you were in?
Well, the first thing is take care of your mental health first and foremost. And there is no shame in that. And I think we live in a time where we now talk about that more commonly. I think that there's still a lot of room to go as far as mental health goes. Twitch from Ellen's talk show, her DJ guy who killed himself. So suicide is still a very real thing. And we need to talk about it. And we need to make sure that everyone around us is well. Because I think the best analogy I've heard about all of this is, when you have a loved one who's going through cancer, you watch them decompensate in front of you. Well, mental health is the same thing, but you just don't see it. It's the hidden killer. And so I think that's the most important thing, is make sure your mental health is well. Make sure you're looking for resources if you don't have them. There are a lot of ways to get help in that aspect. Take care of yourself physically. It's important to work out. It's important to move your body. Sitting around and dwelling on negative is never going to help. And know your value. Know your value, because we all have value. And we can't let anyone assign us that value. we have to have that value, and we have to know it, and we have to expect someone to give us that same value. And then I would say it's one day at a time, you know? And some days you're going to want to work and some days you're not. But you still got to put your foot in front of the other one, and you still got to go forward, and you still have to make a living. And it's difficult. This is not easy. I think a lot of times the media makes it seem like, oh, these girls make all this money and they don't do anything. It's a lot of work to plan out outfits and photo shoots and all of that kind of thing. So, but just keep your nose to the grind, you know. I probably work more than 40 hours a week, but I can do it at different times of day. You know, if I'm on the road, I can work. You know, I can't work on a day I'm shooting, but I can work in between shoots and things like that. And then just do what makes you happy. You know, I did love what I was doing, but I realized after everything was done that I wasn't as happy as I thought I was. You know, so, and this isn't for everyone. This business isn't. And if you can't take care of yourself and know your value, then you won't be successful in this, because it is hard work. And, you know, I've had people say, oh, well, you know, suck in your gut, this and that, you know, I mean, because it's very appearance oriented, you know. So, but take it, apply it, and make the changes you have to, and you can be successful in this business. And if someone wants to get into it and they just don't know what to do, I offer free coaching. They can sign up underneath me and I'll help them, you know, but it is work. And if you don't want to put in the work, then you're not going to make any money. It's just that simple.
As with everything in life, everything that is in I can't talk, sorry. Anything that is worth doing is going to be difficult. Anything that you see people have done that they're successful at, it didn't just happen overnight. You had to work for it.
Well, exactly. I mean, I didn't just become a lieutenant. It took me 26 years to get to lieutenant. So, and it took constant effort, constant work, drive, a lot of tears. And that's just, it is what it is, right? And so that's why I took that same work ethic and I drove it into this, because I don't settle for mediocrity. That's not my jam. And people shouldn't. You didn't just become a manager of your store. You had to work for it.
Yep. That is the truth. I mean, and if it were easy, everyone would do it.
Right. Exactly. Yes, exactly. For sure. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a small community. A lot of different things are going on, and know when to say no. That's the other thing. It's okay to say no. You know what I mean? I say no.
I mean,
I'm like, no, not doing it.
It's one of those things where you got to do what you're comfortable with, and you know, and that's with everything though. I mean, you got to be comfortable in what you're doing. You gotta feel like you can do it and look back and go, I did that.
Yep. I have no regrets. None. So, I mean, other than I wish my kids didn't know, but other than that, I mean, I really don't have any regrets. And it's been a great journey. I've been able to talk to a lot of great people like yourself. I think people are very curious, and I don't have a problem talking about it. Now, obviously, if someone's to walk up to me in the store and I'm with my kids, I'd be like, now's not a good time, you know? But like, I don't know. I don't have any regrets. I really don't.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. It's been a absolute honor to hear your story from you and not something you read, because you can't believe what you read online a lot of times. And I consider it a great honor to have you, just because when I saw, and I hadn't heard the story until you were telling me about it when we talked on the phone briefly, but when I ran across your Instagram page and then started looking, I was just like, I got to hear this from her, because the story can't be everything you're reading. It's just not. Mm-hmm. It almost never is.
No. And obviously there's more to it that obviously I can't talk about, but it was a blessing in disguise. And I think it's super cool that your wife let you interview me for your show. I'm not scary. I'm not trying to take anyone's spouse. I have one of my own. I don't need more than one. And it is interesting, and hopefully women can hear my story and know that there is a silver lining and there is a future, and don't let it stop you.
Yes. Don't. I like to tell people, don't settle for less than. Yep. One of my favorite quotes is, if you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're right. And that's something that stuck with me, just because it's so true. If it's one of those things where you believe you can be successful into doing something, you will it into existence, and you work hard regardless of what it is, mm-hmm. you're going to find a way to do it. And, there's always going to be detractors, and that's sad, but that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, and if anyone else has any questions or interested, I have a website, therealbellalexi.com. I have to give you a shameless plug. But you can go to my website. I have news articles. All my social links are on there. And then that's where you'll be able to find my book when it comes out in May. If you don't have a local bookstore, I'm going to set up a link on there so that you can purchase books directly from me in that way. But otherwise, watch for my book to come out. And who knows, I might be in your city doing a book signing.
There you go. And I'll make sure to post all the links down in the description below. That way you can just click on it and go straight to it.
Great. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Like I said, it has been a real honor to have you on, and to hear your story from you and nobody else, because at the end of the day, there's always two sides to the story, and you got to listen to them both. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, you're a very genuine person. You're a very good person, not actually meeting you in person and not really knowing a whole lot, but I feel like that people who are watching this are going to learn a lot, and, learn that not everybody is what they read.
Yes, that is very true. Always vet your story.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate your time today. It's been really fun getting to chat with you.
It has been a blast. I appreciate it a